The Elements of Friendship, Book 1, Harmony, by Amras Fegeland. Chapter 18, The Last Stand. The heliocentric sun, cast by Twilight Sparkle, nearly 2 months prior, set upon Ponyville, and the nightmare guard's already formidable vigilance was bolstered to near unbearable levels. While the day shift was harsh, it did not allow the villagers to look up to the sky, under penalty of imprisonment and withholding of food and drink. The setting of Twilight sun brought on a whole new level of oppression. For weeks since the quartering of the nightmare guard in Ponyville, the locals had been forcibly coaxed into prolonging their sojourns out of the doors into the admire the light of the moon and stars and feel the chill of the night. Despite the fact that very little snow had descended upon the small hamlet, the cold descended upon Ponyville, and even the heliocentric sun, which brought light, struggled to supply warmth. Big Macintosh sighed. The wares of Sweet Apple Acres had taken a terrible hit from the frost of Nightmare Moon's eternal night. He feared that, even if Nightmare Moon would fall tomorrow, the crop yield of the apples would be severely compromised. Though the trees the apple family used were more resilient toward winter conditions than any other apple trees in Equestria, it could possibly be months before yields returned to pre-Nightmare Moon quantity and quality. For the time being, though, he refused to accept any payment from any pony who came asking for apple products, and he supplied as ripe and red as an apple as he could find to supplement whatever order was placed. It was not as if there was any need for money presently, when most cities, towns, and villages kept their own knitting in the time of crisis. Shivering against the cold of Town Square, Big Mac passed a bag of containing a freshly baked apple crumb pie to a pale beige earth pony mare before him. Bonbon smiled weakly under a bouncy cobalt effusive mane. "Bless you, Big Macintosh." She sighed. "Bless you and all the apples. Lyra really loves your family's wares, and ever since she caught her death of cold..." She averted her eyes sadly to the hard earth, and Big Mac blinked slowly. He knew the co-owners of the Bon Bayer sweet shop were extremely fond of one another, and he learned very quickly of the mint cream unicorn fall to illness the week prior. Despite the Nightmare Guard's insistence that Miss Lyra Heartstrings be transported to Ponyville Hospital under the heliocentric sundown, Mrs. Bonbon and her many identical cousins took to making house calls to Dr. Stable and his nurses. With the physicians under the counter medications and ready supply of food from Bonbon's cousin Sweetie Drops, his cousin Big Macintosh, Lyra seemed to be quite on the way to recovery. Bonbon returned her gaze to Big Mac and attempted to smile. "Thank you so very much, Big Macintosh, for everything. I don't know how we can ever repay you and the apples. Now, I hope you don't mind, but I simply must get back to my sweetheart with her pie."
"Yup," Big Mac replied. "Have a nice day."
Bonbon barely made it 2 steps before a pair of ponies in black armor descended in front of her, a Pegasus and a Bat Pony. Their eyes gleamed with blue mind control, and they closed in on Bonbon and Big Macintosh.
"Stay where you are, Tyruna,"
droned the Bat Pony mare, her wings spread menacingly.
"You have not passed the allotted amount of time for admiring our queen's beautiful night before finishing your errand. Look up to the sky and admire the constellations that Queen Nightmare Moon had set in firmament during the age of discord. Contemplate the empty glow of the lifeless moon, and the meanness of your life for that is gleam."
Bonbon withdrew fearfully from the advancing Nightmare Guard, her ears flattening against her head. The paper bag with the pie was clenched in her teeth, and the Pegasus stallion eyed it.
"Oh no! We may perhaps allow you to return now, if you allow us to handle the wares for you,"
he intoned. Bonbon glowered. A fire lit in her eyes. "You can take it from me, and my Lyra, when Tartarus burns over!" Big Mac stood beside the candy mare solitary, as the Nightmare Guards narrowed their eyes slightly in disapproval.
"Then so be it,"
hissed the Bat Pony. The Pegasus and Bat Pony reared up, the blue glow in their eyes growing as they bared their teeth, a miasmic magical shimmer appearing along the rims of their wings. a pink flash of light by the gazebo. The nightmare guards looked to one another momentarily, the bat pony keeping her eyes trained on the reluctant earth ponies, while the Pegasus turned his head to investigate the flash of light. Twilight Sparkle and her band of 5 ponies, and 1 drake, stood there, each wearing a dark cloak, and the mares each bearing a shadow cell. From Equestria, no doubt. People, the image in my head is so awesome. The Pegasus guard's wings flared. It's the most wanted! The bat pony whirled about face in a blur. The earth ponies behind her giving looks of surprised hope to the new arrivals. It's Applejack and the others! Bonbon gave a cry of joy, the paper bag slipping to the ground as she spoke. Big Mac smiled proudly at his younger sister. So, what's the plan? Applejack hissed to Twilight in fear. Twilight looked at the pair of nightmare guards, who spread their wings and take it to the air, giving her and her friends severe and dark looks. The bookish unicorn filtered a gigagross and 1 different plans of action through her mind as to how they can handle this situation calmly and tactfully. Every one of them was rejected. She glared back at the guards. Take them down! She snarled. Rainbow Dash gave a slightly feral grin to Twilight. Now that's a plan I can get behind. As quick as lightning, Rainbow Dash bolted toward the nightmare guards, who hypnotized loyalty was not quick enough to react immediately. Very shortly, they found themselves being wrapped up in a twister of Rainbow's making. Maybe it's the Rainbow Dry, Twilight thought, and after several moments of hurricane-leveled winds buffeting about, the pair of nightmare guards were flung high into the air. The guards recovered mid-fling, hovering at least a gross hose over the town square. They gave one last look of fury to the most wanted down below, before they began to fly away in a dazed zigzag over the rooftops. Rainbow Dash let out a loud whoop of joy. That felt really good! Twilight beamed. I'm glad it did, because we're here to send a nightmare guard packing. The bay surf pony with Big Macintosh approached a definite air of relieved calmness. She had a paper bag clutched in her mouth, but she placed it down on the ground and smiled at Twilight. Thank you so much, Twilight Sparkle, she said. I heard some nightmare guards talking a few days ago about having spotted you, so I thought you'd be back soon to set us free. I told my sweetheart Lyra all about it, and I swear that she's been getting better ever since she heard that. Now, I'm sorry, but I really must get this pie back to her. She bowed her head lightly, picking up the paper bag in her mouth, before galloping off and out the town square. You came back, said Big Mac, who approached the band of mares himself. I guess not my moon's come down. It's gonna come down soon. Oh, she's going down all right, Rarity snarled. This entire adventure has been murderous on my prideful appearance, and I could not possibly be so wronged by that disciplined spot. Big Mac blinked. He almost did not recognize the alabaster unicorn as the proprietor of Carousel Couture. Her coat was matted and blotched with dirt and dust. Her mane and tail were both frazzled and unkempt, and her unicorn facial hair was very apparent. The other mares around her were not much better off, save perhaps Applejack. Big Mac's eldest sister looked no worse than she did at the end of a typical season of apple bucking. So, y'all came to give these nightmare folks a boot? Applejack pawed at the ground with barely restraining wrath. I'll give him a boot, all right. I'm heading straight for 3 apple acres, and I'll show him what for. Big Mac gave a court nod. And I'm going with you. We apples gonna stick together. Applejack returned his nod. I'll be coming up behind us enough from behind so you got it. Piggy Price remarked, those nightmare guard ponies will feel bad for so serious business all the time. So it's my family, my cat, and boutique are all safe and sound. Rarity said with dark conviction. My darling little adolescent has been deprived of her mommy for far too long. And I do hope that Sweetie Belle has persisted finally in these past weeks. Fluttershy took to the air with Rainbow, a look of fierce determination on her face. Rainbow and I will cover you from the air. You can count on us. Rainbow Dash gave her fiancé a mildly impressed look, before giving a nod of her own, with a grin showing her canine teeth. Before any pony could make a further move, a high scream like a beast out of Tartarus reached their ears or knees.
As their eyes turned to view the source, they saw from beyond the Everfree a cyclonic miasma tearing across the sky at blinding speeds, streaking through the cold air in a beeline for the transformed Canterlot. Nightmare Moon, Twilight breathed. We gotta move! Now! Rainbow Dash shouted. Twilight nodded to Cerulean Pegasus. Exactly, Rainbow Dash! Now! Every pony, do what you need to do to disrupt the Nightmare Guard. Drive them out of Ponyville. Let Nightmare Moon know that we Dirunals won't go softly into the night! The 5 mares nodded at Twilight, before galloping or flying off in their own respective directions. As Big Mac and Applejack tore off for Sweet Apple Acres, Aloysius hooted for Twilight's back. Ooh? What is it, Aloysius? Twilight asked. The tiny owl's head was turned toward the gazebo, toward a cactus and an agave, sitting idly at the edge of a railing, a watering can between them. Twilight galloped up in teary joy. Mom! Fatty! The agave and cactus were in better shape than any plants that Twilight had seen since Equestria. The plants of Ponyville were overly dry from the drought that the continent of Aspisa was suffering under eternal day, while Equestria's plant life were dying of frostbite. Twilight's plant-transformed parents, though, looked almost exactly the same as they had the day before the summer sun celebration. There was perhaps a light listening to the agave's leaves, though. Twilight felt a sob escape her throat, and the plants and watering can lining up in her dormer simmer. Mom, Fatty, I'm sorry, but please wait a little longer. It'll all be over soon. I have just one more thing to do before this is finished. Spike asked her. Where are we going, Mom? Well, Spike, she replied. We're going to secure the library. Apple Bloom and her fellow Cutie Mark Crusaders sat in the living room with Granny Smith, listening to the accordion jazz fusions of the Tea Sandwich Band on the family radio. Ever since the Nightmare Guard had quartered themselves in Ponyville, crusading for Cutie Marks had become entirely more tedious for all the obnoxious observances of the Nightmare Guard. It was very difficult to concentrate on discussing how to get a Cutie Mark, with big scary adults in black armor, accepted by silver shears monitoring your every move and listening in to your every word. Whenever the trio of fillies tried to engage in rough and tumble activities that they were so certain would net them their Cutie Marks, they would be unduly interrupted by a random Nightmare Guard, so as to absorb the beauty of the night sky. And this was not even considering the fact that at least one of Nightmare Moon's guards ponies would be guarded in their bedrooms any given night, or day if it was a bat pony. I really thought we would have had Cutie Marks by now, Apple Bloom murmured. I know, Sleebell said sadly. We've been trying so hard. It's 'cause of those lame old Nightmare Guards, Scootaloo growled. We would have gotten our Cutie Marks by now if it wasn't for... Granny Smith husked young Gambo's filly. That's your name, Scootaloo. You never know when some guard's gonna be releasing land. You gotta be careful with what you say these days. Yellow Mare bowed her head. Never thought a day like this would come. Eva Bloom looked down to her forehost. I don't think any of us thought it would. But Twilight Day didn't sleep. Nelson and Applejack and a bunch of other ponies are out there fighting to put an end to this real long night. But I just wish I could do something. The sound of a clearing throat reached Apple Bloom's ears as she looked up to her grandmother, seated in her rocking chair. Come here, little Appleseed, said Granny Smith, beckoning toward her granddaughter. Apple Bloom tentatively trotted up to the elderly mare, resting between Granny Smith's forelegs, looking up into those peach-colored eyes, identical to her own. I know you just want to help your baby see us out. You want to be your pa's little gal, you didn't. You gotta pick your fights, now learn not to get involved. But I really want to help. I really want to get my Cutie Mark, because I'm sure he'll help Appleseed out for sure. Apple Bloom, your Cutie Mark says something that you need to take your time with. If you try to wrestle it yourself, you'll find in your special talent something that you don't have to pass it for. Your true special talent will pass you by, because you're going to be jaded about all the dissatisfaction you've been feeling up till then. Wow. I would like to once again point out, this was written before Season 5 and before Clyde. But I want to help at something, Apple Bloom persisted, her peach-colored eyes shining forlornly. Granny Smith sighed. There, could you look at your sugar foot? Apple Bloom looked down at her left hind leg.
the only one of her legs to end in white long-haired fetlocks. Her other 3 legs were the same short-haired, pale yellow as the rest of her coat. It was something that her family had endearingly called her Sugarfoot, as it looked like she dipped her left hind leg in a tub of sugar.
I'm looking at it, said Evelyn flatly, but what's it all about? Your pa had the same sort of fetlocks on all 4 of his legs. You look mighty like your ma, but you got your pa's coat, and makes like his or your ma's tail.
Evelyn's eyes widened in wonder.
I know you know all that. All the pictures we got of Ma and Pa are black and white. But what's this got to do with...
Grace Smith rested a slender foreleg over her granddaughter's back, drawing the pale Villian close.
Your pa was always a strong coat, even before he got his cutie mark. He wasn't always the sort of pony that stand about as tall as Queen Celestia herself. He couldn't always buck half the orchards in the trees in the span of 1 week. But after we lost her grandpa...
For one brief instant, Granny Smith's peach eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but the grief was gone in a blink.
I decided your pa needed to take up the slack for all his little brothers and sisters. And I gotta say, I could definitely see why Pony started calling him Chief. All sorts around Ponyville wanted him to run for mayor, but he always turned it down. Why did he turn it down, Granny Smith?
Asked Apple Bloom.
Pa seemed like a right pair of a pony. Your pa had a heart as strong as a horse's,
Granny Smith replied.
And he was smart enough to know that he had lots of friends around town. Still had lots of enemies, too. His best friend, Filthy Richard's father, audaciously rich, despised the Apple family, and he had the money to buy the folks to get him out of the race. So your pa kept his souls clean, kept to the grandson, and helped maintain Ponyville for the sidelines. Well, I'm trying to tell you, Sugarfoot, that you're doing everything you can for Applejack while here in Ponyville. You've been helping your big brother at the apple harvests, haven't you?
Apple Bloom nodded truthfully.
Yeah, I'll help, Granny. I'll help set up baskets so Big Mac can pick down the apples.
Granny Smith offered a tired smile.
Then you're helping out with something. You don't have to carry the weight in the world on your shoulders to make a difference. False steps, lady. False steps. Lane, one day I'll be bucking apples the same as Big Mac and AJ?
Apple Bloom tried to smile, but suddenly found herself tearing up, even as she managed to maintain a cheery look. After sniffling for several seconds, she relented and let herself cry.
Oh, my Applejack, Granny.
Granny Smith nuzzled her granddaughter somberly, and Sleepy-Bell and Scootaloo slowly trotted up to their off-pony friend, and each raised a foreleg around their back.
I miss her too, darling,
the elder Earth Pony whispered.
I wish I could tell you what was happening with my little Benham, but they just don't say anything about her on the radio. But,
Sleepy-Bell interjected,
you did not say anything. Doesn't that mean you think your moon hasn't found them yet?
Granny Smith's face loosened slightly, with some small wrinkles slackening as he contemplated Sleepy-Bell's query.
You know, darling, I think you're right.
Darn too she is, Granny. The elderly heaned green mare stalled at the sound of a very familiar voice. Blinking up at the archway leading to the foyer, she saw a very familiar orange Earth Pony mare. Apple Bloom clung to her host joyously.
I'm a tank!
She galloped toward her big sister, as quickly as her little legs could carry her, wrapping both her forelegs around one of Applejack's. The little Earth Pony placed the other foreleg around her little sister. I'm back, little slayers, Applejack said.
I'll miss you, Applejack,
cried Apple Bloom. Tears ran down Applejack's muzzle.
I'll miss you too.
Granny Smith stood slowly from her rocking chair, trying slowly toward her hard sire's second born.
Good to see you, Applejack. Is Big Mac and Josh with you?
Yup, came a voice from behind Applejack. Just inside the foyer stood the burly red stallion, who was Hard Sire's firstborn. And Applejack's friends are here in Ponyville, too. We're going to take this village back.
We are?
Scootaloo shouted excitedly, grinning broadly.
So, Meredith's back in town?
Sleepy-Bell asked with wide eyes.
In Rainbow Dash?
Piped Scootaloo in mirth. Yes, the buffaloes, replied Applejack, shuffling off a saddlebag that looked almost exactly like a giant clamshell. Kicking it open, a small cadre of red apple shards of stone floated out from within,
and levitated around the crown of Applejack's head.
What are those apples like?
Apple Bloom asked. These, she replied, are the element of loyalty, the element of harmony out there. Gray Smith smiled proudly.
Certainly fits you, my sweet. I always knew you were a true apple. I was looking out for the world you live.
Applejack blushed red, running her hook through her ragged mane.
You look like you've been through dark times yourself, ain't I?
Nodded Gray Smith.
At least, so get some hairbands in that mane of tail of yours. I'll get one of your hats,
squeaked the Apple Bloom, darting up the stairs. Oh, Gray Smith, you really don't hate, do you? Applejack replied sheepishly. Besides, we really should be driving them nightmares out here. It's not like they're welcome at Ponyville, and they laid one hoof on Apple Bloom.
They didn't feeling.
Sleepbell cut in, over Applejack's rising tone of anger.
I mean, we've been having lots of trouble trying to get our cameras lately, but...
The little white unicorn smiled wryly.
It's not like we've got to be in bed before dark, right?
And besides, Skidaloo smirked, if they tried anything to Apple Bloom or Sleepbell, you'd be seeing my hoofprint in their eyes for weeks. Don't think y'all should be getting involved in this mess, Applejack muttered, as Apple Bloom scampered down the steps, a fresh Stetson clutched in her teeth. She caught the tail end of her big sister's statement, and looked mildly affronted as she passed the hat to Applejack.
What? But why? I'm not a baby, Applejack.
Applejack placed the Stetson on her head, smiling briefly to celebrate the return of that feeling of headwear, before giving Apple Bloom a slightly stern look.
Maybe now, Apple Bloom,
but you ain't a mayor yet. Bling Mac and I'll go about the farm and clear out any of those near-the-well nightmare guards. You and your friends should stay here. Make sure Granny Smith keeps safe.
What?
Snapped the Yellow Mare.
I didn't know his blood, Applejack. I could take care of myself.
What I might, Applejack grist to Henry Smith, so that the Cutie Crusaders could not hear her, is that some ponies need a watchful eye, so they don't go wandering into trouble. Granny Smith's face slanted in understanding, before giving a sly wink to Applejack. Applejack gave a smirk to her grandmother, and gave one last little hug and kiss to her little sister, and strode out the front door into the farmlands with her big brother. So, Big Mike, what sort of trouble can we be expecting hereabouts? Big Mac dug in his forehoofs, a sap green light dancing down his legs as he closed his eyes. Taking after her brother, Applejack shifted her shoes slightly, reaching down through the earth with her mind, stretching out her awareness to every corner of every field in all of Sweet Apple Acres. It seems that there were at least 24 nightmare guards scattered about the orchards. They seemed to be patrolling the outer edges of farmland, as if anticipating that Applejack would have snuck in some other way than the main gate. Applejack's eyelids clenched. You saying that, Big Mike? She asked softly. Yep. There was a movement off in the northeast of a great number of somethings. It almost felt like the staccato movements of timber wolves, but it certainly did not feel like something of that size. It felt more like ponies, but ponies with an uncanny shuffle to their movement, all moving toward the farmhouse. A grim thought entered Applejack's mind, but she confirmed it with Big Mac, who spent more time in town than she did ordinarily. Big Mike, what's out to the northeast of Sweet Apple Acres? She could not keep the twinge of fear out of her voice, and her brother's answers to 3 words only sent to send a wave of terror through every bone in her body. The implications were chilling, and it brought a deep and irrational shiver into the ordinarily implacable mare's legs. Those 3 words Big Macintosh said were, the Ponyville Cemetery. Thriller, thriller night. The Golden Oak Library was surrounded by at least a dozen Nightmare Guards ponies, 3 of each pony race, 6 on the ground and the winged Pegasi and Bat ponies in the air. The glow of their hypnotized eyes shifted back and forth almost mechanically, apparently keeping an eye out for any pony who strayed too close to the library. Twilight did not care if they saw her. It wasn't right. This repository of knowledge, under lockdown, those poor books, not allowed to be read, it was unforgivable! They may have been hypnotized, but it was still unforgivable. The guards around the Golden Oak Library immediately spun around to face her. crying out orders to one another and bolting toward her, no doubt to place her under arrest. "Mom!" Spike whimpered in fear. But Spike need not have feared. Twilight's rage at the wrongful withholding of books and knowledge kindled an inner focus in the lavender unicorn, giving her a heightened sense of where each of the guards were going to be until 2 seconds later, allowing her the clarity to set up each spell to disable or incapacitate each of the dozens that were descending upon her. And she reckoned it would be a simple task. In her prior observations of the other Nightmare guards, though they were bound to the will of Nightmare Moon, they are incapable of acting out any form of magic that was not their own. Her parents and watering can settling on the earth, Twilight lit up her Alicorn fury. 2 seconds later, each guard was either bound in magically conjured rope or placed in a magically induced unconscious state. As livid as she was about the library lockdown, Twilight Sparkle had the presence of mind enough to know that these dozen mares and stallions were not doing this willingly. It was because of Nightmare Moon's eldritch magic that subverted their volition. Spike blinked in astonishment. He had never seen Twilight casting magic so deftly, or so effectively. Was it her willpower and rage that gave her such quick spell work? "Woohoo!" hooted Aloysius in wonder at the pink glowing ropes around the nearest Pegasus guard, who struggled against its bond. "How dare you keep these books forbidden from the good ponies of Ponyville!" Twilight snarled at the fallen guards. "Knowledge is the greatest gift that the Maker gave us, the desire to grow smarter and wiser." He urged to ask why. The need to answer that question. Who does Nightmare Moon think she is to give you such atrocious orders? Right, because eternal night that can freeze everyone to death isn't bad enough, Spike grumbled, as he slipped off down Twilight's back. As soon as he finished, though, he felt himself withdrawing in fear at Twilight's lasting tongue. "You have a point, Spike," she said softly, with an understanding look on her face, as he raised the forelight sheepishly. "I mean, it's several she should do this, but—" She nodded a little wordlessly, her horn glowing once more, and her pink glimmer shimmer lining up around the agave, cactus, and watering can. "Now, let's head on in." The Golden Oak Library interior proved to be a little different than when Twilight had left it after the Ursa Major incident so many weeks ago, albeit with a more haphazard setup to the books. It may have been simply that some Nightmare guards had taken to a bit of light reading during their occupation of Ponyville, but the idea that Nightmare Moon would allow her mind slaves such a leisure was almost laughable. It also was possible that the disarray was on the orders of Nightmare Moon directly, that the Nightmare Guard had been instructed to throw books around pell-mell because it was just wrong, and those books on the shelf were completely thrown out of alphabetical order, and the Dewey Decimal System was being completely ignored, judging by the way that these books were arranged in a glance at the— "Mom, are you alright?" Twilight blinked. She had been lost in a nightmare world where books that were arranged in their proper order in the library. She looked down at Spike bewilderedly. "Sorry, Spike, what just happened?" "You just zoned out when you saw the way these books looked," he explained, gesturing out at the library room. "I mean, I'm not OCD like you, and even I think this place is messy." Twilight glanced over at the books, strewn randomly about the library, finding the voice screeching at the back of her mind that this was all wrong. It needed to be corrected. There needed to be some focus on the real issue of Huff. "This mess of books! No, Nightmare Moon!" Setting her parents down by an open window, it gave them a generous watering. Twilight set her eyes on Spike. "Now, Spike, I really want you and Aloysius to stay here in the library while I do what needs to be done," she said with conviction. Spike's eyes widened in shock, and Aloysius settling on the edge of the table in the middle of the room, poking his beak into his wing. "But, Mom, I was with you all this way, helping you guys out, and you're gonna leave me here at the end?" It hurt Twilight more than she reckoned to say this to Spike. She knew that he was still very sensitive and how she felt about him, so she drew him in for a hug and hugged her other leg tight. "It's nothing with anything you've done. You've done wonderfully on this journey. But I just want to know that you're safe, Spike. I'll cast a shield spell around the library, so that you know you're safe here. And I know you're safe." "Whew!" said Aloysius. Twilight held Spike tight and glanced momentarily at her pet owl. "Keep each other safe here until I've come back, and please take care of your grandparents." With a heavy heart, Twilight placed a kiss on her Spike's forehead and stepped out the door. The mulberry drake reached plaintively out toward the closed door, but Twilight only looked sorrowfully back at him before offering a forlorn smile. Spike gave her an imitation of a smile in return as the door closed. Spike turned to Aloysius, arms folded. I should really go with her. Who? Me, well, you know what I mean. I just want to help out. I don't want to be just left behind all the time. I'll never be able to impress Randy like this. Whew! She's only the most beautiful mare in all of Equestria. No, the entire world. She's just so kind and generous. She's so beautiful, even with her stubble. Whew! Oh, come on, don't be such a sourpuss. Randy might not like facial hair, but it looks nice on her, I guess. Honestly, not much for facial hair on unicorns. But if Randy liked it, I suppose it wouldn't be bad. Whew! But I suppose there's always after Nightmare Moon. Spike trudged over to the agate cactus under the window, settling down to the chill wind that gusted in. Outside of the library, Twilight looked over her shoulder at the tree of bereavement. Please stay safe, Spike. Aloysius, she thought. Spike, Mom, Fatty, Aloysius. I hope I'll be able to see you all safe and sound again, in a world where the world is not divided between freezing and burning. Her horn glowing pink, she lined up the spell matrices in her mind to generate a dome-shaped shield over the hollow tree of Golden Oak Library. A glowing pink semi-spear settled into existence over the hallowed oak, minute incandescent sparkles dancing along its surface as this magic manifested and settled. With one last heartfelt look out the window at the slitty green eyes staring gurgling at her, she steeled herself and turned, right into the face of Pinkie Pie. She had dissed her cloak and salsel, and the blue glowing shards of the element of laughter circled the top of her head. She seemed to be wearing some sort of contraption that was made out of 10 instruments at once. A harmonica, a tuba, an accordion, a banjo, a drum. It does still look like it should have been allowed anywhere, never mind the fact that no pony should have been able to play it, no matter how one multitask with one's magic. Leave it to Pinkie Pie to specialize in an impossible instrument.
Hey there, Twilight!
The pink-haired ploy squealed joyously.
Does he know that looking sad all the time gets you premature wrinkles? My Grandma Pinkie was wrinkled while she spent her whole life taking a bath. But my Granny Surprise Pie always looked so young until the day she flew into the side of the mountain. You want to know what her secret was?
Twilight blinked in astonishment. Not at Pinkie's uncanny ability to appear practically muzzle to muzzle with some pony just because they were turned away from her, but the casual nature which she described the apparently bloody demise of her grandmother. What was your grandmother's secret, Pinkie?
Laughter! Pinkie shouted gleefully. She always let out all the problems of life slide off of her with no problems. She never got worked up about anything, so it never had to show up on her face, and she always told every pony that a laugh a day would keep the pony reaper away. And it looked really like that, because she was just so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed the first time she visited me on the rock farm, as she was the day since she hit the rocky wall.
Pinkie Pie, she was probably just a young grandmother. There are some ponies who have their kids at an early age. How old was your Granny Surprise when she died? Pinkie tilted her head in mild confusion.
She was 7
Twilight was really alarmed. If Pinkie could be taken at her word, then her grandmother had been exceptionally well preserved, even unchanged for decades. And she put it down to laughter? Makes sense to me. But maybe it was just Pinkie that was trying to tell her not to stress out too much. Sighing, Twilight decided not to ask or comment. After all, Pinkie had to come from a very bizarre line of ponies. Well, Pinkie, I'm sorry for your loss, she began levelly, and how can you be so casually about how you lost your grandmother? Pinkie's bright smile softened sadly.
Because my grandpa always told me and my sisters not to let bad things keep us down. She said that laughter is the gift of the makers that you can find in anything. And you know who insisted we bring to speak at our funeral?
Who?
Ponyville, the greatest clown that Equestria had ever seen. Turns out he was friends with her when they were foals, and she wanted to talk to him about the same sort of jokey stuff that was there when he was doing his clowny stuff around Equestria. She wanted him to roast her on her way to the Elysian Fields, which sounds really bad because I don't think she liked things all super toasty grazing up on that ambrosian grass. But then it turned out he was telling all sorts of super funny jokes about Grandpa. That was the best funeral ever. I hear Grandpa's having a great time in Elysium.
Twilight grimaced slightly at the idea of a funeral that was so strangely buoyant, but forwarded it off as par for the course for Pinkie Pie and stammered, "Well, that's great and all, Pinkie, but are you ready to help me retake Ponyville?" The pink mare replied with a surprisingly dark scowl, flipping her mane and producing a key with a tiny cupcake keychain, which was caught in the corner of her mouth. She stopped the hoof on the ground. A large patch of fancy script peeled back, revealing a shaft of candy-colored metal as a whirligig that looked like to be made out of cotton candy canes, and the tetracycle starts pulled out, carrying a veritable army of copies of Pinkie Pie's party cannons. The whirligig settled on its payload beside Pinkie Pie as Twilight went at the gate.
Ready? I wasn't born ready.
Pinkie snarled, while strumming her banjo honestly.
I was ready before I was born!
Yeah! She finished with a menacing tune on her harmonica. Okay, that should be not as awesome as it is. Slipping into that familiar cul-de-sac near Circuit Cube Corner proved to be rather difficult, but slightly less so than it could have been. If her coat had been its usual pristine self, Rarity would have found herself attracting far more attention in the scary slice of the nighttime Ponyville. For the first time in her life, she was glad to be so well begone. None of the guards ponies set out to patrol this area seemed to be bat ponies, whose vision was known to be far keener in the darker than light. Rarity possessed the keen eye of a tailor, which gave her a fine eye for patterns and small details others often missed. Though there were no bat ponies acting as watch pony in the area, the power of the patrol still allowed for very little time to reach the end of the cul-de-sac, where her family called home.
"Why aren't the secretaries there, Rarity Belle?"
she thought to herself.
"These ruffians have stolen away your hometown.
So do what befalls those who cross the lady." "No," said a calmer voice in the back of her head.
"You aren't that versed in that sort of spell work, Rarity. You would sort of rather be dragged before the great devil Lord of Tartarus before you made it past the nightmare god by force. Craftiness and elegance would draw you past."
Clutching the dark glow close to her body, Rarity sunk low to the earth as she prepared to make a move.
"No!"
Darting as softly as a dove crossed the rough earth, Rarity slipped through the blind spots of the patrolling guards, and rapidly passed the houses between her and her home. The cloak served the dual purpose of shielding her from the penetrating cold of the eternal night, and blending into the darkness of the streets around her. Torches and lanterns, filled with fireflies that were ordinarily present, had since been removed by the occupying forces, effectively rendering the cul-de-sac a veritable blind spot for all of Ponyville. 3 years of calling this cul-de-sac home allowed Rarity to easily discern which of the houses was her own home. As she peered up into the broad living room window, her parents sat together, heads leaning together, a candle's light flickering on the table in front of them. The soft whisper of sweet nothing shared between them made Rarity's heart ache for a stallion. But that was an issue for a kinder time in Equestria. She slowly raised a hoof and lightly rapped on the window.
Tink, 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 tink.
Hondo flanks and Pearl Bubbles startled slightly, glancing back at the window. Rarity offered a slightly nervous smile. The blind spot around this particular house was soon to end. She would like to get indoors as quickly as possible. Her parents' faces lit up at the sight of their elder daughter, and Hondo leapt up and vanished from sight. The door clicked slowly and quietly, the burly Earth Pony Stallion pulling the door open. "Howdy, Bonnie, Rare!" exclaimed Hondo at the sight of his daughter. "You didn't look so bad from inside. When's the last time you had a shave?" Rarity gave a small sigh.
Please don't remind me, Father. May I come in?"
Quickly withdrawing, Hondo left room for Rarity to enter her full home. The living room, as it transpired, was only lit by a single candle, its dim flicker hiding the tackiness of the blend of carpet and wallpaper from Rarity's vision. Almost immediately after the door closed itself behind her, Rarity found herself being embraced tightly from both sides of her parents.
"Mother! Father!"
Rarity rasped.
"You're squeezing me!"
The sound of curious mewling reached Rarity's ears, over wall down from the upper floor. Blurry eyes locking onto Rarity.
We haven't had the chance in ages, see?
Sobbed Pearl into her firstborn daughter's mane.
We're making it for last time,
Hondo murmured into his daughter's mane.
I understand that,
Verity replied.
and thought I appreciated.
Pearl withdrew quickly. The plump pink unicorn smiled seriously.
Oh, Deborah, sorry, dear. We just miss you so badly.
Hondo unlocked his burly forelegs from around Rarity. We're really glad to see you again, Rare. Verity returned a warm smile.
I am very glad to see you two again as well, but where's Sweetie Belle?
The fact that her little sister had not been there to squeeze her until half her ribs were cracked was slightly troubling. Her heart lifted to her throat. Has something happened to her?
Oh, she's at the safest place in all Ponyville, Sweet Apple Acres, replied Hondo. You all believe that Big Magachas Fell's a pretty swell stallion. He knows his way around the stable. Oh, and he's Sweetie Belle's friends with her little sister too at the boat, Pearl squealed. They're such an adorable friends together.
The fact that Sweetie Belle was together was with friends at Sweet Apple Acres, rather far removed from major thoroughfares of Ponyville, gave a substantial feeling of security to Rarity Belle. The sweet little filly was surrounded by very familiar ponies, any one of whom would do all they could to ensure her safety. Rarity watched her father's chest swell with pride, as he no doubt contemplated the prospects of Rarity asking for Big Macintos's hoof in marriage. It came to her just how much muscle Hondo still had.
Father,
Rarity began, audible purring and nuzzling against each of her legs in turn.
I have a small favor to ask of you.
Feel free to spill it, Rare, he replied. Slipping off her shadow cell, Rarity drew out the elements of generosity, the amethyst glow adding a resplendent aura to the room that masked the mismatched decor. Her parents' eyes shone with awe at the sight of the stone shards orbiting her daughter's head.
Well, I've had to favor my particular element of harmony, generosity, as have four of my friends, but we are presently looking to free Ponyville from Nightmare Moon's tyranny before taking the fight to that rehearsable beast. Would you be willing to lend me your strength in taking down these guards?
Hondo and Pearl looked at each other fondly, Pearl giving a sweet nod before Hondo curled up a foreleg, as preparing an uppercut. The buff stallion giving a slight smirk under his bushy mustache. You can count on me, Rare. You don't call me Hightail and Hondo for nothing. Moments later, Verity followed behind her father as the former football player charged at the nearest guard and gave him a great bum rush. Once the guard was dazed, Verity produced some ribbons from within her parents' home and tied them firmly about the downed guard's pony. She smiled proudly in spite of herself. Barely a moment later, the Earth Pony guard mare tore her restraints apart and charged to dive at the alabaster unicorn. Verity covered her face with a cry of fright. But the blow did not come when she heard her father continuing to knock heads further down the cul-de-sac. She looked up at her former assailant. The guard was rubbing the side of her head bemusedly as he gazed at the element of generosity floating around Rarity's head. Her brown eyes cleared as a cloudless day. Rarity had an epiphany. The sounds of party peppers drew the attention of virtually every member of the Nightmare Guard stationed in Ponyville, though it did not carry so far as Sweet Apple Acres. What especially gave them reason to inspect the source, though, was the fact that each party popper sounded more like a cannon blast, which was so unlike any party popper that any guard's pony had heard. There have been reports from Endymion of a great cannon blast before the Moon Gate when the Most Wanted had assaulted the Royal Endymion Index and stolen a book on Ponyville culture, though in thoughts of this put the Nightmare Guard on its guard as they approached the origin of the blast. There, he found two of the Most Wanted. Twilight Sparkle, wearing a black cloak and riding some sort of whirligig made out of candy cane, cannons, and tetracycle parks. A Pigmina Diane Pie with some sort of contraption of instruments slung around her barrel and glowing blue shards around her head. The elements of harmony! Get those shards! Shouted the unicorn mare in monotone, the bulk of the guards charging the pink earth pony. I don't think so. Twilight replied in kind, her glimmer shimmer pulling the fuses of the three of the party cannons strapped to the whirligig. With a high rubbery squeak of the cannons, fired off tightly bound bundles of helium balloons with the force of meteor projectiles down at the hypnotized guard's pony. Each cluster of balloons bursting on contact with the ground and inundating them with helium gas. The guard's ponies coughed as the helium swirled around them. Piggy's 10-instrument contraption letting loose a din of musical chaos.
It's just helium! Don't father!
Choked the unicorn guard's mare, stammering as he realized how high her voice now was. Despite their hypnotized states, the guards around her started to laugh, and thus attempt to restrain themselves from laughing. From her youth, Twilight always found helium fascinating in the way it made one's voice sound so funny. Her father, Knocklick, had always taken to inhaling a small bit of helium during birthday parties to entertain the party subjects. Whether it be Twilight herself, her mother Twilight Velvet, or...
Now, isn't laughter the most wonderful thing?
Pinkie Pie shouted as a wave of battle cry as she left the guards. That should not be awesome! Emblem of laughter blazing blue. As he drew near to the Nightmare Guard, though, something remarkable happened. Their eyes widened in wonder at the sight of the shining blue stone shards near inches from their faces, blinking away the blue light. And then, they each lost their lockstep cohesion and looked about in indivisible confusion. Their eyes no longer held a hypnotized sheen. Oh, dear Celestia, where am I? Murmured the unicorn guard's mare, a hoof on her temples. Twilight gasped in wonder. The elements of harmony break Nightmare Moon's mind control! Whoa, for real?
That's wonderful.
Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy had flown up at either of Twilight's sides, looking down at the scene below with mild wonder. Their shadow cells had been disposed of, and gold and green glowing stones danced around the Pegasi's heads. I was thinking of spooking them with lightning storms, but you know what? Rainbow Dash smirked. The element of honesty could use a workout.
Those poor ponies, not knowing what they're really doing.
Sighed Fluttershy, a compassionate light in her eyes.
My element of kindness to set them free.
Darting down to join Pinkie, Rainbow Dash and Fluttershy helped her along in exposing their controlled guards to each of their three elements. This was eased by the fact that the guards' ponies were still paralyzed by choking back laughter at their helium-induced high voices. Helpless as the elements of laughter, kindness, and honesty being brought close as Pinkie, Rainbow, and Fluttershy could to each guard in turn. Each mare drew away. Each guard took her head or his head in confusion, though some were quicker than others to realize their plights and offer profound gratitude. In less than a minute, almost all of the Nightmare Guard, which had confronted the pair, were free from Nightmare Moon's tyranny over their minds. Twilight pedaled the whirly gig down to ground level, hopping off to stand beside Pinkie, Rainbow, and Fluttershy as he looked over the liberated guards, who were casting off their Nightmare Guard armor and looking down upon it dismayed. Twilight Sparkle! Gasped the Pegasus Stallion, spotting the lavender unicorn out of the corner of his eye. What in the world happened? I just remember Nightmare Moon. She came to Caroline. He clenched his teeth and narrowed his eyes and his hooves. I can't remember. Nightmare Moon used some bizarre disharmonious magic to hypnotize all of you to enforce her will where she could not always be. But I was tasked by Queen Celestia with making friends, so that we could defeat Nightmare Moon with the elements of harmony. It makes sense, then, that the elements could neutralize her hypnosis. The elements of harmony, breathed the unicorn guardsman from before. I thought they were gone from this world. If they do still exist, then we have a chance. Twilight nodded. Royal Guards! You have all sworn an oath to protect Queen Celestia and the land of Equestria from all who would do harm. Now, let us all work together in throwing down Nightmare Moon, starting here at Ponyville! The Royal Guards gave a great cheer. In spite of the prospect of facing the arisen cultists of Ponyville Cemetery, Applejack found it surprisingly simple and quick to subdue the guards who had occupied Sweet Apple Acres. So he put it down to the lack of resistance, only due to an act of self-preservation rather than cowardice, that the Nightmare Guard had faced previously in the vicinity of the Animal family farm. Though they were all formerly highly trained members of the Royal Guard,
The mind control placed on them by Nightmare Moon had evidently sapped them of a great deal of their quicker instincts, allowing Applejack and Big Mac to incapacitate them with startling ease. A unicorn mare guard struggled against the earthen binds that had formed about her hind legs in midsection. Biting her forelegs, her turquoise eyes flashed miasma blue at the apple saplings, but her ability to retaliate was doubtlessly inhibited. "Now," Applejack said, with only the faintest hint of a shudder, adjusting her citizen, "we gotta deal with these folks and the undead up the northeast. Ready, Big Mike?" The Red's red stallion shrugged. "Don't know." Applejack blinked slowly. "So I'm here." The pair slowly turned up toward the northeast, taking tentative steps toward the darker lands where so many went to their final resting place. Admittedly, the light of the element of loyalty, as its fragments orbited her head, rather put Applejack right out of her right frame of mind. She was not used to bright lights swirling around her head, but she would not give for a jouster's blinkers at the moment. But, at the same time, the element of loyalty led to wholesome air to the vicinity. Wherever Applejack walked, it seemed to be a place of serenity, where nothing ill would befall her. Even so, she could not help but dread the encounter she would have to the northeast. What exactly she dreaded, she could not fathom. But Applejack was an apple, and the sooner she would throw herself from Canterlot's highest tower to the depths of Saddle Canyon below before she would back down from a challenge. "Applejack!" A bright pink flash of light filled Applejack's vision, momentarily shining brighter than the element of loyalty. A Twilight Sparkle winked in less than 24 hooves away, alongside Rarity and Pinkie Pie, the latter of whom was sitting astride her candy flying machine, whirly-a-gig. A sonic boom sounded from Ponyville. A Rainbow Dash rapidly approached before coming to a halt just before their group. Her forelegs wrapped around Fluttershy's barrel, and the yellow Pegasus was curled up as tightly as he could. In fear, maybe. Halos of glowing stones encircled their heads, adding in glows of gold, green, blue, and purple to surroundings. It looked very like a heartwarming Eve celebration. "Hey, everybody!" cried out Applejack in joy. "Did y'all finish up down in Ponyville already?" "To my joyful surprise," replied Rarity with a nod. "I knew I would not have the force to take on the Nightmare God, so I asked for some assistance from my father. He was a linebacker before he met my mother, you see. But, as it transpired, well, perhaps Twilight can take over from here." "Really?" Twilight asked with a slightly astonished laugh. "Rarity, my talent is magic, not exposition. Though, I suppose I could explain it. You see, Applejack, our elements undo Nightmare Moon's magic!" cut in Rainbow Dash excitedly, startling Fluttershy, and making her jump and cover her ears. Twilight narrowed her eyes at Rainbow Dash scathingly. "Really?" Applejack mused, looking up at the shards of the element of loyalty, glowing apple red in a makeshift halo. "Well, I guess that makes some sense. I mean, the elements did bash Nightmare Moon to the moon, didn't they? But..." Ponyville turned her head nervously toward the northeast once more. "Y'all don't think the elements will be able to deal with some of Nightmare Moon's undead folk, do ya?" "Undead?" Twilight gasped, looking in the same direction as Applejack. "You mean the cemetery's been..." Applejack nodded slightly. "Celestia knows what sort of state those undead folk are after dragging themselves out. And, I don't know, but I feel some creepy feeling in my belly at the thought of dealing with them." "Creepy? Like little creeper crawlers?" Pinkie asked. "Not quite like that, Pinkie. I really don't want to know what the devilry that Nightmare Moon's worked on. I mean, not all ponies die from old age, right? Some of them died because of monsters the other free, or because of some other complications." "Applejack," Twilight said sympathetically, realizing what Applejack was talking about. "I think you do know why you don't want to face Nightmare Moon's undead hordes. You know, but you don't want to face it. You're scared, and you'll see your parents out there, aren't you?" Applejack stared back at Twilight's eyes, wide with fear, bordering on hysteria. Twilight gently reached a hoof out to Applejack, but the Polemo did not seem to notice. When Twilight's hoof touched her shoulder, though, Applejack's eyes softened as they looked down at Twilight's outstretched foreleg.
I'm such a big baby, scared of seeing my parents' dead bodies moving about like some sort of puppets. She murmured darkly. Nightmare Moon's a downright snake in the grass, using ponies' bodies as some sort of cannon fodder to throw at us, but they ain't regular cannon fodder. There are parents, grandparents, all sorts of other ponies who passed out our lives. But what if Nightmare Moon's just using their bodies as puppets to do her sick will? What if she dragged my mom and pa down for the Elysian fields and is forcing them to work their old bodies into all sorts of pain and agony? I couldn't take it. Seeing them in those eyes, I really couldn't. And if these elements of harmony will just end up pulling them down, I don't know if I could take it. Listen, Mom, I can't! Tears streamed freely down Applejack's freckled face, her jaw quivering violently, rendering her almost unintelligible. Big Mac looked down at his sister sadly, attempting to sniff back his own tears. Her grief and terror were plain to see, a whimpering wail surely carrying back to the farmhouse. Even Pinkie Pie could not find the words to diffuse the misery in the air, her coat and mane starting to fade to a dull blue, and the latter going flat and lank. Twilight Sparkle, for her part, brought an emphasis soot to Applejack's cheek, and wiped away a streak of tears with her fetlock. Green eyes met purple eyes, and in that purple she saw infathomable love. Applejack, I know all too well what it's like to lose parents. Mine may not be dead, but I have no way of bringing them back to their pony forms. They might as well be dead, but I've never given up in keeping them alive as long as I can, in case I find something that can restore them. But I had a nightmare some weeks ago. That Nightmare Moon planted in my head. My parents were back to normal, mostly, but they were still part plant and they didn't last long. She did not fight the tears of her own, letting the pain flow. I was terrified by what I saw. But if I could figure out the exact spell matrices that triggered in me when I cast that spell on them, I won't hesitate. It was only my own fear and imagination I saw there, honed by Nightmare Moon into a dreadful sword. I won't let my fears be the master of me, but if you don't think you can face them, then I'll be strong for you, Applejack. I'll be by your side the whole way. Applejack's sobs had subsided, though the flow of her tears had not been stemmed, despite the friendly hoof on her cheek. An open-mouthed smile crossed her muzzle, the lines in her face softening as she raised her scarred foreleg to hold Twilight's cloven hoof. "You'll do that for me, Twilight? Even though I'm a sour, sobbing little foal?" Twilight gave the farmer mare the warmest smile she ever had worn her whole life. "You supported me and stood by me for so long, AJ. I would be remiss not to return the favor." As he kissed Applejack on the cheek. Flushing, the farmer mare goggled at Twilight. The lavender unicorn had not removed her hoof from Applejack's cheek. There was a faint tinge of pink in her cheeks as well. She felt her heart pounding in her ribcage, a warmth like fresh cider flowing through her being. "If we all stand together with our friends, our loved ones," Twilight said softly, looking around at the steadfast Applejack, selfless Rarity, tearful Pinkie, who was regaining her color, gentle Fluttershy, and forthright Rainbow Dash, each returning a nod and smile as they locked eyes with her. "I'm positive we could do anything, because our friendship is magic!" The words had come out Twilight without Twilight fully resonating them, and before she knew it, there was a brilliant hotness glowing in her heart that was both intimately familiar and unmistakably alien. A bright orb of light emerged from her chest, and despite its brightness, there was no pain in locking her eyes with it. If anything, it drew her eyes to it, and it filled her spirit with a calm she did not know possible to be felt. All about her, the elements encircling her dear friends' heads began to glow more brightly, coalescing into 5 singular spears over each of their hearts. Eyes widened in wonder as the lights molded around their necks gently, locking at the back with a soft clink. But the orb floating in front of Twilight did not encircle her neck. Rather, it settled down upon Twilight's head snugly behind her horn and between her ears. As she felt it materialize on her pole, She did not feel any weight, as though it were a part of her that had returned to her anew. The 6 glowing sources of light faded, and each of the 6 mares gazed at each other in wonder.
"Oh, my stars, darling,"
Verity cried out to Fluttershy.
"you look as though you are fresh from an appointment at Alicorn's spa, and I must say, I myself feel absolutely refreshed." "Oh, I don't think it's just me, Rarity,"
replied Fluttershy.
"You look more beautiful than I've ever seen you before. And that necklace of yours, it suits you so well." "Necklace?"
Verity echoed, looking down at her neck, where the light of the element of generosity settled, was now an intricately carved golden necklace of interdimensional age, set in the middle with the most beautiful amethyst he had ever seen, carved into the shape of
"My cutie mark!"
Verity squealed with joy, eyes darting from the lozenge-cut sandstone to the 3 lozenge-cut diamond shapes on her flank.
"It looks just like my cutie mark."
"So this is yours, Fluttershy?" Rainbow Dash smiled, pointing at the peridot butterfly into Fluttershy's necklace.
"Yours has too, Dashing!"
squealed Pinkie Pie, her hoof practically touching the citrine lightning bolt on the necklace around Rainbow Dash's neck. "On yours, Pinkie Pie!" beamed Applejack, indicating the turquoise balloon on Pinkie Pie's necklace.
"Yours as well, Applejack,"
Verity cut in, nodding in approval at the ruby apple set in Applejack's necklace.
"And so's mine."
Twilight gasped, looking up as best as she could at the golden tiara that now sat atop her head. A Pinkamena 6-pointed star on top of the piece, shining as if with its own inner light. Twilight had the idea of what it was. "The element of magic!" she cried in elation. "All right!" Rainbow Dash shouted in mirth, doing a loop-de-loop. "Now we got all 6, and we can take down Nightmare Moon!"
"Not just yet, Rainbow Dash,"
interjected Fluttershy.
"We have to deal with those puppet dead at the edge of Sweet Apple Acres."
"We really don't have to," Applejack cut in. "We really should begin at the Camelot and take down that no-good nightmare!" Twilight froze. She really wanted to do good by Applejack, and dispose of those puppet dead off to the northeast of Sweet Apple Acres. However, she understood that for every additional moment that Nightmare Moon remained in power, there was one more moment of everlasting night that would do so much damage and more suffering for far more than just the Apple family.
2 months ago,
I would have gladly thrown the Apple family aside to save all of Equestria, she thought. But now, I can't bring myself to leave her family behind in the dust. In the time it will take us to get to Canterlot with the anti-Wiki War set up, the puppet dead could overrun Sweet Apple Acres and put an end to Granny Smith, Apple Bloom, and the others. Twilight's thoughts were interrupted by a report like thunder in the sky, and a miasma descended upon them. And the 6 mares instinctively swung about in a circle, their backs to each other. The unconscious guards on the ground stirred, the hypnotic blue light gone from their eyes, to be quickly replaced by a sheen of panic as the miasma solidified into 10 Pegasi and bat ponies in deep purple flight suits. "The Shadow Bolts!" Nightingale's teeth bared furiously. "You cursed day lovers! Don't think that victory shall be in your hopes just because you acquire such shiny accessories!" She snarled. "You'll never reach Queen Nightmare Moon, or even leave this Ponyville!" "Shut your trap, traitor!" Rainbow Dash snapped in reply. "Who are you to snot at us?" Nightingale flapped her wings menacingly. "I am the Knight Captain of the Shadow Bolts, the most elite flying team in all of Equestria, and all of the world! And I have never betrayed any ideals in my life. I have only ever served the Queen of Everlasting Night. You think you know loyalty, Apple? You would not lay down your life for your cause! Quit your yammering!" Applejack growled, stomping a hoof, was flash green, and sent a pillar of earth straight at the Nightingale. Captain of the Shadow Bolts flew to the air and hovered above the settle of ponies, her muzzle contorted in haste. Then another pillar rose up behind her and smashed her into the earth. "Nope," spat Big Macintosh, a dull green glow leaving his hind hoof. Nightingale glared up at the band of day ponies. Her flight goggles once more shattered. Discarding them, she stood back up, pawing at the ground and giving a murderous look. "I will make you pay dearly for this!
You and whose army, ruffian?
Challenged Rarity. This pale Pegasus gave a foul grin.
This army.
Swirling dark clouds appeared behind the shadow bolts, barely concealing shambling forms of scores of pony shapes. A faint chorus of rattling breath of death filled the silent air. Downwind from the oncoming force, Twilight Sparkle and her bang wriggled their nose at the affronting order, though the shadowy fog prevented a clear look at the oncoming shapes. Terrible hints of what they truly were could be made out as they shuffled closer. Lipless mouths, jaws hanging limply open, legs that were far too thin to be on any living pony, knobby joints of knees and ankles, exposed spinal columns, shredded ears, and loose hanging shapeless things from their abdomens, empty rib cages. Thriller, thriller night. There were earth ponies amongst them, and pegasi with wings hanging lifelessly at their sides, or unicorns whose alicorns were chipped or even snapped off. But all had the hellish red light for deep within their lifeless pupils. Or, in the optic canal of those void of eye sockets, the puppet dead had arrived. Applejack's eyes widened in disbelief at the approaching creatures. These were things that should not be alive, that could not be moving, but they were. Olden campfire stories about the dead arising from their graves could not have prepared her for this. Their staccato, incline movements, their dead eyes in their eyes, the unsettling way they held their limbs. Her heart stopped. A towering earth pony, his tongue hanging limply from a jawless skull lacking a left eye. Beside him, a petite, skeletally Erlander earth pony mare, her mane and tail almost to the point of bareness.
Oh, oh,
she breathed. A crack like thunder. The shadow bolts took the mare immediately, but were shortly thereafter tackled by what appeared to be beams of sunlight. The puppet dead stopped in their tracks, shuddering violently at the brightness of the contrails that remained in the air. Instinctively, Twilight fired off a dormer beam from her alicorn at the puppet dead, and to her astonishment, it was accompanied and amplified by a bright pink ray of light from the star of element of magic. The resurrected bodies let loose dreadful, rattling screams before they collapsed to the earth, crumbling to ash. Get out of here, you lot! Get to the capital! Bellowed a familiar voice from the Pegasus who tackled Nightingale. It was Captain Spitfire, and never before had her wreath of magical sunfire been such a welcome sight. Above the orchards of Sweet Apple Acres, contrails of daylight and darkness clashed. The Wonderbolts had come at last.
What in the world?
Shouted Unicorn Mare guard as she struggled to her hooves. Go with me, while those devil flyers are distracted, shouted Big Macintosh, nodding his head back to the farmhouse in the distance. Help me get all your guards together. We can keep Ponyville safe for trouble. The freed guard did not need to be told twice. She quickly roused her fellow guards from the ground and led them in a herd away from the clashing Wonderbolts and Shadowbolts and toward the farmhouse. Good luck, Big Mike! Applejack called after her retreating brother. With the Shadowbolts now preoccupied, Twilight knew that she and her band had an opening to take advantage of. It might have been short, but so they would have to make the most of it. They could not break the anti-winking wards with the elements of harmony, those wards not being a part of Nightmare Moon's magic. But there was one way to counter it that was very quick. It was the same way that Twilight had arrived in Ponyville from Canterlot to begin with. Let's do it, girls! Twilight shouted. We're going to Canterlot! Before her friends could ask how this would transpire, Twilight channeled her magic through her alicorn and into the element of magic that sat upon her head. The crown of magic glowed like a pink sun, a beam of light lancing out and connected to each of the 5 other elements. A bubble of pink light surrounded a lot of them, and very shortly each and every one of them lifted off the ground, the force of gravity no longer affecting them. Pinky flicked her legs about gleefully as they crested upon even the highest rooftops of the hamlet of Ponyville. Twilight turned her gaze on the dark bastion of battlements upon Alicorn's peak, as he set her will upon reaching it as quickly as they could. The orb of protective light shot toward Endymion, a former character like a cannonball, leaving behind it a trail of bright rainbow colors: red, golden yellow, green, blue, purple, and pink. We just need orange. Above, nightingales fought off Spitfire with a twister that sent the Wonderbolt captain reeling, nosing the retaining form of the orb of harmonious light, shooting an arc toward Endymion, crossing a great many miles of distance in the span of only a few blinks. Cursing under her breath, she sent her mind out and broadcast a psychic report to the one who would fell the Queen. Finishing, just as Spitfire collided with her once more. She, who sat on the throne, needed to be prepared for the inevitable showdown. The Queen of Everlasting Night sat upon her black throne, eyes closed down in deep thought. That infernal Twilight Sparkle and her band had continually evaded her for far too long. Though her plans had allowed for many contingencies, every detail covered and labored over for many gross centuries, those mealing little foals were proving to be far more detestable than even she had reckoned. Though the thought had gladdened her that the foals knew not what terror awaited them in the future, that they should come close to unseeing her proved to be excessively irksome. A flash of cold blue flame and an equine skull lacking a lower jaw appeared in the air before her. Though her eyes remained closed, her ears flicked, indicating that she gave her full attention to the new arrival.
Your Majesty,
the skull hissed.
Captain Nightingale reports that Twilight Sparkle and her son living troop have activated all 6 elements of harmony. They converge on Endymion. Your plan of action, my Queen of Air and Darkness.
The Queen's eyes opened slowly, slitted pupils dilating the dim light. She looked deep into the skull's dark and empty orbits, thoughts mulling about dully in her mind, before a ravenous grin split her muzzle in twain, fangs dripping with saliva, and her eyes flaming crimson. Let them come. Join us Sunday, folks. The final battle is here.